tricks to guide you to becoming your very own B2B superhero. This week, we are welcoming to B2B Superpowers Jodie Goodchild, who has 2 decades worth of experience in lead generation and has indeed previously been employed by Lead Forensics. So, Jodie, welcome home, I guess.
Yeah, it's nice to be back. Yeah, I've known lead forensics and been involved in lead forensics for a very long time. And I have known the owners of lead forensics since I was 19 years old. So that's like 17 years.
Wow, fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
Fantastic stuff. Well, I'm
crazy.
sure we're going to get well, we might mention lead forensics once or twice in this conversation, given that we are talking about the biggest lead generation challenges and how to fix them. So, Jodie, my first question to you is quite a broad one, but let's just kick off the conversation. What, to your mind, what are the most common lead generation challenges that, that are currently being faced by sales and marketers out there?
Great question. And it's one that I love to talk about right now. The biggest issue I think and challenge we've got, there's two things that go into it. One is the lack of education. So there's people out there that know that they need to do lead generation, but because they're not educated, they're finding people to help them do that. And if they've not done their research and they just get somebody because they might be cheap, or they're offering, we can get you 10,000 leads and you're going to make £1 million a month. We've all had those messages on LinkedIn. Um, it goes wrong. And the biggest problem that I see, honestly, is something that I call spray and pray. So it's where companies will just buy a huge list of contacts that don't even necessarily meet their criteria and they're not their ideal customer, but they'll send the same message to the whole, 20 odd thousand people, and expect to get some low hanging fruit from that and lead generation. And that is absolutely not the way to do lead generation. That's the biggest challenge. The other thing that I'll say that it's a huge issue right now that I'm kind of trying to combat single-handedly on LinkedIn at the moment is the pitch slap, as we all know it, and how LinkedIn was created to be a networking platform for like-minded individuals, entrepreneurs, business owners, senior people in business to talk and share best practices. However, a certain group of people that also, go on LinkedIn have figured out how to use automation software and how to pitch slap everyone. So when you get a message on LinkedIn now, you expect somebody to be trying to sell you something, and that is a huge issue on LinkedIn. So much so that I've been doing a lot of networking, or trying to do a lot of networking on LinkedIn as a new business owner. So I'm 13-month trading actually this month. And the minute that I mention to somebody that my kind of specialism, if you like, is outbound lead generation, bang, they're just like, not interested, no thank you. And I'm like, I'm just trying to have a conversation with you about outbound lead generation, the trends that we're seeing. So I think they're the biggest challenges I think we've got right now, on lead generation for sure.
And do you think, because of the nature of what you do, Jodie, because it is lead generation, do you think there's more of an expectation that it's going to be a pitch because it is lead generation? Do you think there would be
No,
less of an
no.
opportunity if it was something else?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I just think, while I do think there is a real stigma around the word lead generation, but purely because of that pitch slap piece. But LinkedIn has been flooded with people trying to sell. So regardless of the offering at the moment, the minute, if you just try and message somebody straight away, they do genuinely think that you are going to try and sell them something. So I don't think it would matter whether you were talking about lead generation or um, manufacturing. If they're going straight in with a message, you get a connection request, and then the next minute you've got a pitch in your inbox, and that's why everyone's just so against talking in messages on LinkedIn, really.
Mm. Well, I do hope, Jodie, that in my message to you, I wasn't pitch slapping too hard to get you onto this webinar.
No,
So
no, no, you didn't. You'd watched my live, so yeah, I was open to a conversation, but yeah,
exactly. So it's that authenticity piece again, isn't it? Which
it
comes up
is.
so much in B2B. To go back to your initial point then about it being, people aren't educated on lead generation, where can they go to do that research that you mentioned?
That's a really good question. I think you've just got to make sure that you're speaking to the right people and you're doing your research before you engage with the company that you're going to use to do lead generation for you or with you or support you. Because I think there's two different types of pools of people on LinkedIn. There's people that are on there to make millions and millions of pounds. They don't care how they get it. And there's people on there that genuinely want to help people, and they'll give away things for free to help people whilst trying to make money at the same time, because ultimately we're all on there to make money. Everyone needs to make money. Lead generation happens in every single business, regardless of whether it's referrals or whatever. But yeah, I think just do your research and go on like YouTube, go on LinkedIn, and look for people that are recommended highly, and people that it's not necessarily about likes. One of the things that always shocks me is there's not naming any names, but there's somebody that I follow on LinkedIn, and they've got thousands of followers and thousands of comments on their posts, but what they're actually telling people to do is a dangerous way of marketing. And what's scary is because they've got a huge marketing budget, people are buying their stuff. And I've spoken to people who've bought their stuff, and then they're like, oh yeah, I bought this and it actually didn't deliver. And I'm like, well, no, it wouldn't deliver, because that's not how you should do lead generation. So yeah, I think you've just got to be careful. And just because somebody's got thousands of likes and followers doesn't necessarily mean that they know what they're talking about. Speak to their customers, speak to people that have used their product or their services, and just really thoroughly research what you're going to do before you do it. That's probably what I'd say.
And I suppose it's that a strange sort of metric that perhaps it's quite difficult to measure is that advocacy, that word of mouth thing. Even on LinkedIn, that sort of thing, people sharing what's good on there. That's probably more useful to than saying, oh look, X number thousands of comments, likes, and all that sort of thing for this marketer that you mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
think that's quite a in our current world where we're on our phones 24/7. I think we all naturally assume if somebody's got thousands of likes and thousands of followers, that they know what they're talking about or they're good at what they do, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. I've just started a YouTube channel, and I've got 4 subscribers, which I'm absolutely over the moon with. I think probably 2 of them are my parents. But and I've had somebody message me saying, oh, you've got a YouTube channel and you've only got 4 subscribers. If you pay me some money, I'll get 60,000 views on your videos. And I'm like, well, I don't want that. I don't want
mm.
somebody to watch my video unless they're genuinely going to get something out of it. So what's the point in having thousands and hundreds of thousands of views if it's just for the sake of numbers? Like, I do my stuff to help people. I don't care whether I help one person a month or 10 people a month. There's just other people out there that've got tons of followers, and that doesn't mean that they know their stuff. That's what I'll say.
It's funny that we're having this conversation right now, because as I was listening to you, then I realized that this morning I saw a thing on LinkedIn that I was like, oh, that's actually put things into quite a nice perspective for me. Is that it was somebody had set up a YouTube channel, and like you say, they had a small number of subscribers, and the post just said, look, the person, like, they might have only X number, 100 maybe subscribers, whatever, but they can attribute that every month 2 or 3 leads come through that. And there was something really, really wholesome. I was like, oh, do you know what? It's nice seeing success, even though it's like, it's gradual and it will incrementally increase. It's nice
Yeah,
to see somebody at that end of the process rather than going, hey, check me out. I've done 20 million in whatever.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? It
yeah,
was just, yeah, it
yeah,
was a quite a wholesome moment on LinkedIn, which,
yeah.
they
Great
can
point.
be few and far between.
Yeah, yeah, we can.
So okay, let's drill down then, Jodie, into lead generation strategy. What currently, as of today, what are the best practices that you see for lead generation?
Okay, so this is another subject I could talk about all day long. So for the last 12 months, I've been harping on about this, but the biggest thing for 2024 is social selling. And gone will be the days of just being able to, call somebody and sell them something, or, you know, um, just drop a message into their LinkedIn inbox and sell them something. It is all about relationship building. Sales come from relationships, and I think the way that the market is moving, as we're now in this digital age since COVID, everything is about building relationships and educating. So my biggest tip to anybody looking to enhance or improve their lead generation going into next year is to focus on educating your ideal customer profile. So giving them, some of what you do for free, and giving them educational content, because you need to build trust. That's the biggest thing. They need to be able to trust you, and build relationships, genuine relationships. Don't just connect with somebody for the sake of it. Connect with somebody and ask them how business is going. strike a relationship, get talking to them, then understand what their pain points might be, and then perhaps you can have a conversation. And it happens to me all the time. And I actually spent quite a lot of time behind the scenes on LinkedIn contributing to the collaborative articles, which I don't know if you've heard of those, but LinkedIn quite often it has different subjects. So one of them was lead generation, for example, and it will ask questions like, how should you do this when you're doing lead generation, and what would you do here? And I wasn't blasting that to the world, but I was going in and adding genuine insights to those collaborations and giving genuine, honest answers. And I was getting quite a few likes on those. And you know what? That was, going back 2 months ago, that was my biggest lead generation stream. I had the most inquiries coming in from that, which was just mad because I wasn't focused on, going on LinkedIn to get sales. I was going on LinkedIn, and my focus is always, how can I help somebody today? What could I share for free today that's going to help somebody? And because I do that, LinkedIn in general has been the biggest revenue stream for me over the last 12 months, because I've focused on relationships rather than going straight for the jugular and trying to sell people. So yeah, my big thing for next year is all about relationship building trust, sharing educational content, and then the sales will come, because we're all on our phones 24/7, and we're so educated now that we already know who we want to use and what we want before we need it, if that makes sense. Like a great example is my website. Like, I knew I was going to need a new website. My old one was terrible. And there was a local company that was sharing loads of really interesting things on LinkedIn. And I built a relationship, even though I hadn't spoken with them, because they were sharing stuff with me. So when I finally had the money to invest in a new website, where did I go? Straight to them and said, right, I've got this cash finally. I need a new website. Can you help me? And I think that's the way that sales is going, honestly. I really do.
So do you think could we see? I mean, we've started to see this already, but do you think we're going to start to see almost like super influencers on LinkedIn, like people who build up from the social selling element? I'm thinking about people like your Tom Bostons, your Will Aitkins, Chris Van Prague's, Michael Hansen. I could go on about people who have
Yeah.
who do it really, really well, and actually who have appeared on the Lead Forensics podcast and webinars that I do. So not to blow me in trumpet, but if you do want to go and see any
Yeah.
of those, leadforensics.com/webinars. Or leadforensics.com/podcasts. Go and have a look at some of those names that I've mentioned just there. Who, to your mind then, Jodie, does that really well currently?
Do you know what's good to see? And I'm going to break the trend here. So there are those people that you mentioned that are quite well known. But what I've really loved over the last few months is seeing companies that actually now do that. So it's not necessarily an individual, it's a company, and people within that company are doing. And I think you guys are great at that. Like I quite often see the things that you're posting, that you do these webinars to help people, you share videos that educate people, you share content that helps people. And that's great. And I wouldn't say there's necessarily like a certain person I'd mention, but yeah, I just think it's great to see companies that are educating their ideal customer profile before they've got a need, because they're going to be getting leads coming in, from somewhere that they won't even be able to track the source, because they'll be like, well, how did you even know about us? And they're like, oh, well, I've been following you on LinkedIn for the last 12 months, and I've really built a great relationship with you. So yeah, I think it's actually, there's a few companies out there that they've got it down. Like Cognizant is a great one.
Yes.
And Gong, they're two of the great ones. They're great resources as well, by the way. If anyone listening, go have a look. But their company LinkedIn's are sharing amazing information that is super helpful to everyone, and they're doing that for free. And their aim of that obviously is to get sales, but they're educating people, which is building trust with their audience, so that when somebody's got a need for data or call recording software, where do you think they're going to go? They're going to go straight to Gong, and they're going to go straight to Cognizant.
So that's very interesting. I didn't necessarily expect that we were going to have the conversation around social selling. So no, that's an incredibly interesting piece that you mentioned. So in terms of let's try and help our audience then. So with social selling, where do you think people can start? How can you easily make a start on that sort of thing? Is it creating content first?
I think it's about, really understanding, making sure that the team that are in charge of your content really understand your product and your service. And obviously, I'm not suggesting you go and give everything away for free, because, we all need to make a living, but think about things that your ideal customer profile will struggle with, and what are their pain points, and what content can you give them that would help them see that you're a trusted brand. So, for me, for example, my ideal customer is, a business that need, an MOT of their lead generation strategy. So things that I share that will help my audience are educational things about, people and processes that I've learned over the last 20 years. So, you'll see me posting videos of things like, if I was to do an MOT check on a lead generation strategy, what things would I be looking for? I've done a video on, retaining retaining talent and inductions, and how you make your new SDRs and BDRs stick around. How to prospect, all that kind of stuff, because that's also showing my ideal customer profile that I know what I'm talking about. Because then they'll see stuff and they'll be like, this girl knows her stuff, and they'll be like, we need her to come in and look at our lead generation strategy because she clearly knows what she's talking about. And that's what you can do. So, if you're a manufacturing company and that there's particular pain points that your buyers will suffer from, share things that will help them, that you're going to learn from, and talk about those things. And that's what I'd suggest. Things like ChatGPT can be great for that. I know some people are against it. But if you're struggling for ideas, you can jump on that and say, look, what are the typical pain points of my ideal customer? This is who they are. It'll tell you what they are. And then you can say, right, create me, 5 LinkedIn posts that will help educate my customer about things that will help them. And that's probably how I'd start.
I mean, I would just, as an addendum to that, don't then just post that. Do go
No.
and sense check it and make sure that
Yes.
it all lines up, and everything, rather
Yeah.
than just
'Cause
dumping it into
if you can see the word fostering or collaborative, then it's come from ChatGPT. I literally scrolled through my feed and I'm like, ChatGPT, fostering growth, collaborative, like you can tell. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely sense check it. Another thing that I was going to mention, actually, if you don't mind, and I know that people might expect me to plug Lead Forensics because I've worked there, but I really wanted to mention this because I talk about this. So I run a lot of workshops with smaller business owners and medium business owners about how to easily create leads. And you would expect me to say this because I worked at Lead Forensics. I worked in enterprise business development, and then went into customer success, where I was helping customers get the most out of the data. But the best way that you can use Lead Forensics, if you're either using or not using it, and if you're not using it, you should be using it, is to connect it to your Google Ads, because it's so powerful. So what that means is if you connect your Google Ads to your Lead Forensics account, it just makes it even easier, as if it isn't easy enough already, because it shows you obviously who's already on your website. What this will do is it take it to the next level. And when I plugged my Lead Forensics account, because I'm a Lead Forensics customer, whilst I left, I love the software. I literally had a sale within 4 hours of my Google Ads being plugged into my Lead Forensics platform. And that's because you can see the keywords that people have searched. So not only can you see the business name, so, ABC Limited, but you can see exactly what they've searched for on Google. So with me, it was somebody that was looking for business development training. So being able to see that, I jumped straight into LinkedIn, found the company, looked on people, found the managing director, messaged him and said, hey, I specialize in business development training. I'd love to have a conversation with you. He replied straight away and said, how strange. I was just looking at your website. And I was like, let's talk. Got on the phone, had a conversation, and literally within 2 hours, he paid an invoice for me to run some training with his company. Like, absolute game changer. So that's my biggest tip, taking away the social selling stuff. But if you're a Lead Forensics customer, plug in your Google Ads. It's super simple. If you don't know how to do it, speak to your customer success manager and they'll help you. But yeah, that's a game changer. And it was one thing I really wanted to mention coming on here today, because it's really interesting. Having been on, the customer success side of the fence, working in Lead Forensics, I was always advising customers on best practices and how to use it. Then stepping onto the other side of the fence and becoming a customer, it was really good to kind of see that. So yeah, for anyone that needs a tip, go connect Google Ads to your Lead Forensics.
Well, fantastic, Jodie. I mean, you've made my job an awful lot easier. So just to add to what you were saying there, if you want to book a no obligation free trial or sit a demo with us, there is a poll on screen which I put up right now. Normally I do a little spiel about Lead Forensics and say, hey, look, if you want to know who is looking at your website, then have a demo. You've done that for me, Jodie. So I will
My
just add to that
pleasure.
by saying, hey, if that all sounds really good, click on the link. Also, there is another link on screen right now, which is our webinar feedback survey form. So I would love to know what you enjoyed about this week's webinar. Jodie, I do wonder actually, because I was gonna start to wrap up the conversation and come back to you with one final top tip about lead generation. I do worry you may have just given it away in
Yeah,
that your top tip is
probably
to
have.
go for lead forensics. Is there anything else, any other things that you'd like to add to that, just as a also
Yeah,
one final thing?
yeah, one final thing, and it kind of goes back into what I've just said, but if anyone's watching this and they don't use lead forensics, get the trial. You've got absolutely nothing to lose. You will see who's on your website. And as a small business owner, I'm not just saying this because I used to work at lead forensics, so I don't have to say that anymore. Genuinely, it was an absolute game changer using it for me. Being able to see who's looking at my website, especially when I'm social selling on LinkedIn and I'm doing videos, etc. It's super, super powerful. So if you haven't had a demo, get a demo, have a look at the data. You can get some free data and see who's looking at it, or you can see the records. I better not say free or anything, but you'll be able to see who's on your website. But definitely have a look at it, because I think it would absolutely help, especially at the moment where times are particularly tough. People are always looking for things. So if there's a way that you can uncover some potential leads, then why not give it a go?
Excellent stuff. Well, Jodie, thank you very much for joining me for this conversation. Thank you also for checking recognizing that I may have a biased opinion, but actually having been on both sides of it, that's probably quite a fair observation. So, Jodie Goodchild, thank you so much for sharing your insights on lead generation with us today. Do keep an eye on Lead Forensic socials for news of our upcoming webinars going into next year, and we will see you again very, very soon. Jodie, once again, thanks so much.